Welcome to DevaTree's Love Who You Are podcast. If you're new to DevaTree, we certify meditation teachers and offer online courses in yoga for anxiety and teaching yoga to children. DevaTree's been a leader in the wellness industry for almost 30 years. I'm your host, Candice LaPointe. Join me as I connect with insightful guests who share the surprising places their meditation, yoga, and wellness journey have taken them. Navigating the human experience can feel perilous at times, but our guests share how embracing their radical uniqueness and applying self-compassion can change everything. Hello, beautiful souls. Thanks so much for being here and listening. I'm hoping you can feel my heartbeams of gratitude. In this fourth episode of the Love Who You Are podcast, I sit down with Bija Kerri Repta. She leads DevaTree's faculty-mentored program, Dogs Doshas, an integrated approach to Ayurveda and yoga. Vata, Kapha, Pitta, what's your dosha? I came to this conversation with limited knowledge of Ayurvedic principles and the doshas, or so I had thought. I'm realizing this ancient wisdom lives inside all of us, and when we understand and reflect on our unique makeup, we can restore balance, practice compassion, and embrace who we are. In this season of the Pitta dosha, I'm reaching for cucumber, watermelon, and giving myself grace when the items on my to-do list don't get done. As Bija mentions, we will always balance ourselves if we follow the rhythms of nature. The Lao Tzu quote comes to mind: nature does not hurry, yet everything is accomplished. In our conversation, Bija shares a wealth of knowledge that's relatable and easy to digest. After listening, we invite you to check out the show notes and complete a dosha quiz. Drop us a comment and let us know which dosha you align with because we love hearing from you. Enjoy this episode, my friends. Hi, Bija. How are you?
Hi, I'm so great, Candice. How are you doing?
I'm fabulous. I'm so looking forward to our conversation and just even being in your presence, Bija. I can't even begin to tell you just our little catch up beforehand, before we started recording. It just feels so lovely to have you here with me. So thank you for coming on.
Thank you. I'm
Yay.
so honored that you asked me.
Yeah, of course. I think maybe, again, just how I've been doing this is getting folks to kind of introduce themselves, maybe for folks that don't aren't familiar with the DevaTree family. If you just kind of wanted to explain who Bija is, maybe your role with the DevaTree family and the course that you that teach with us, and what's going on in life right now.
Okay, sounds good. So I'm Bija. Hi, everyone. And I have been with DevaTree since the inception of DevaTree and took their yoga teacher training the first time that it ran. So it has been a while. And Tamika and I have been friends for many years, even before that, before yoga was such a huge part of both of our lives. And I facilitate the Dogs Doshas Ayurvedic yoga course through DevaTree and have for many years. And I'm so honored again to have been asked to do that by Tamika. She always has so much faith in me and my learning. So that was a really cool opportunity that has just blossomed into being such a lifestyle for me, like my own diving deeper into Ayurveda and coming back to it when I let go of it for a while. So Dogs Doshas is really an Ayurvedic based course, but with the slant of yoga, like teaching yoga practices that involve the doshas, which is part of Ayurveda, and just looking at, I think of Ayurveda as like a lifestyle embracing of who you are. It really helps you focus on what makes you you, what makes other people who they are, and just leads to this beautiful, compassionate way of looking at others and at conflicts maybe in a different light and understanding with a deeper empathy where other people are coming from and that we're all so different as much as we are all the same at the same time. Yeah, so I've been with DevaTree for a long time and just loving being part of the new way that they're doing things and bringing the courses to our DevaTree peeps.
My goodness, I love this. We're diving right into it all. And can you maybe explain a little bit more about? You've mentioned the doshas, and I have to be honest, I have never taken down dogs and doshas before, and it's on my list of courses that I want to take. Can you explain a little bit more to people about what are the doshas and how do we find out which dosha we are?
Sure, absolutely. So when I think of Ayurveda as a concept, I think of it as like a basis of principles. It's actually a system of medicine, the oldest system still being practiced in the world. It's been thousands of years. It came up through the Vedic texts with yoga. So you may often hear that Ayurveda is a sister science to yoga because they really came up together through those Vedic texts. To understand the doshas, I'm going to backtrack a little bit and just explain that Ayurveda is a way of looking at our constitution of who we are and what makes us up, not just our physical body, though that's part of it, but also our emotional body, spiritual body, our psychological body, our senses. The senses are really important in Ayurveda as well. So it's really like yoga, all encompassing and very complex, but also very simple at its base. So I really feel like they are sisters in that respect. And the very kind of core of Ayurveda is that we are all living beings, not just humans, but all living beings are made up of a very unique mixture of the five elements of space, air, fire, water, and earth. And then the doshas are the three, there's Vata, Pitta, Kapha are the names of the three doshas, and they are made up of their own blend of the elements. So basically, when you're figuring out your dosha, you're figuring out, because we all have all five elements in us, every single person, but we're more dominant in certain elements. So the doshas are made up of two elements each that are kind of like your dominant personality traits come from that mixture, your dominant physical features, and the whole concept of how to balance your doshas is to think about them as that opposites will balance and like increases. So if you're, for example, we'll talk about pitta because it's pitta season right now. The doshas also apply not just to people and living things, but also to the seasons, to time of day, to our season of life, like very all encompassing. So if we're thinking about pitta season, which is right now in the heat of summer, especially right now with this heat wave we're having, very, very high pitta, which is mostly fire, and that's the heat, and a little bit water. So if we're wanting to balance that dosha, if that's your dominant dosha, you're thinking opposites are going to balance you. So it's hot right now. So if we use cooling foods, cooling breath practices, cooling yoga practices, cooling meditations, like always thinking about cooling and soothing, we're going to balance out that dosha. And even if you don't want to, you're not called to figure out your own particular dosha or you find it confusing, even just following the doshas of the seasons and balancing yourself that way, that's always going to bring you back to balance. Another of the, I know this is a big love of yours, is nature. Another principle of Ayurveda is that we will always balance ourselves if we follow the rhythms of nature. So if we're following the rhythm of the hot pitta summer right now, that means that we're going to balance by cooling, not exerting ourselves as much, having a more calm, cooling yoga practice, really protecting. Like for me, I have high pitta as part of my dosha makeup. So for me, it's really important to balance during the hot summer months. So it's even about protecting my peace. Like that's even more important to me in these times of heat than in the cozy kind of cooler winter where pitta is already going to be kind of calmed down and a little bit cooler. So that whole concept of like increasing like. So if I'm right now, if any of us in high pitta season are eating spicy food and getting in like really confrontational conversations, doing like a hot yoga practice, putting like hot sauce on everything you eat, like all of those hot things are going to increase the heat in your body and affect our digestion and our skin and everything about us and our minds because you can be hot-headed during that like high heat time as well. So that's how like is increasing like. And then the opposites that are going to balance that in a simplistic way would be just think of cooling, maybe cooling compresses, cooling cucumber in your water, like increasing the coolness of your water with cucumber, melon, mint is a great herb to bring in the summer months to cool.
Wow, so much information, Bisha. This is amazing. One thing that really kind of stuck out to me is, of course, having an understanding of all of these doshas and understanding how to balance your dosha seasonally throughout the day. I mean, it's all encompassing, like you said. How does so? It would involve, and correct me if I'm wrong, it would involve, it sounds like, a constant check in. So, kind of
Mm.
understanding the traits of every dosha and understanding like a check in of this is what I'm feeling right now. This is perhaps because of the dosha of the season or my personal dosha. Am I right? Am I talking correctly here? And constantly checking
Mhm.
in and seeing how we can go about balancing it so that we're not tipping the scales in way of the extreme of one dosha. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah, I like that. That you can, but you also don't have to. It doesn't have to be an every moment like, oh, am I doing this for my dosha? Am I doing that? Even if you just think in that broad spectrum of we're coming into it's solstice coming up,
Mm.
we're coming into actual deep summer, which is that high pitta dosha time of year. Even if you just think from that basis, like I'm going to start introducing in my meals for myself, my family, some more cucumbers, watermelon, mint, lime, like those cooling and even cooler foods, like not having hot, spicy bowls of chili, and like just thinking about your menu through the summer, it's just going to balance everybody. So it can be very moment to moment if you want to really like dissect it and get into it that way. But it can also be easy breezy. It can be, okay, I'm just going to change up my yoga practice for the next couple of months. I'm going to change up my food intake the next couple of months. Like for me now is a time for digestion cold smoothies, like frozen fruit smoothies or frozen vegetable, or if you're putting ice in with your fresh vegetables, like all of that cold is hard on your digestion, and especially in the cold winter months. So I stay away from cold smoothie kind of drinks and ways of getting my nutrition in during the winter months. And then coming into spring, and especially now, I know my digestion is going to handle it better when there's just so much heat in my body that it's not going to like freeze my digestive system, basically. Yeah, so just
Okay.
things like that, just broad spectrum. I think that manageable bites is a really great way to look at Ayurveda, that you don't have to dive into every single aspect, but just having a different way of approaching food, yoga practice, meditation practice, whatever your wellness practices are, and even spices that you can use that'll be a little bit different and just tweak it for the season. For the in Ayurveda, there's 3 seasons for the 3 doshas.
Love that. So it seems like that would be a fabulous way to get introduced to Ayurveda and the
Mm.
doshas, like not these dissecting it so intensely. Hey, we're entering into the summer months, and what can I do to help support my system? Like you're saying, you personally with the cold smoothies, and you know that your digestion system can handle that right now. And that sounds perfect. A perfect way to get introduced to Ayurveda. Now, how did you become introduced to Ayurveda? How did you get into this? What sparked your interest in way of medicine? Oh, sorry if I'm
Yeah,
saying that
like a medical
incorrectly.
system.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, because
Wow.
when you really dive in, like Ayurvedic doctors, which I am not, an Ayurvedic
Right.
doctor is going to know about the tissues and how the doshas affect every tissue and organ and system in your body, the circulatory system. Like it's very, very complex and amazing. So that again, manageable bites, right? So my introduction to Ayurveda, I think I first just kind of saw it somewhere in a yoga magazine and started getting interested and started doing some reading, figuring out my own dosha. Then I let it go for a while. And then I was in a yoga class, and the instructor, the yoga teacher, was telling us about Ayurveda and kind of weaving it into yoga class a little bit, and I just like, I felt like I came alive. I was like, I love customizing, like I love figuring myself out more, and I love that kind of approach, that it's not a blanket approach for every single person, that it's so individualized. That really called to me. And then I did a consultation, an Ayurveda consultation, to help figure out my own doshas. And then that, again, that was part of, like, I just kind of put my tiptoe into Ayurveda. And at the time, I owned a spa, and I thought, like, this would be so cool to bring into body treatments and like tell people about it in a spa wellness kind of atmosphere. So then I went to Kripalu and took my Ayurvedic and Ayurveda bodywork course there. And then it just blossomed from there.
Wow, that's amazing. And so you kind of trickled and dove right into
Yeah.
it. And if I can put it that way, but
Yep.
how would you say that Ayurveda has impacted your life? And kind of touched on this notion of getting to know yourself better, and then also being able to then relate to others and kind of have a better understanding as to perhaps what someone else is experiencing or where they're coming from based on this practice. So could you kind of glean a
Yeah.
little bit more into that about how it's impacted you and your relationships?
Whew, that's such a great question.
Are you passionate about meditation but find you've lost focus and inspiration in recent years? Are you searching for the right techniques to help create a meditation practice? Our online meditation teacher certification explores this expansive and life affirming practice in a way that honors your individuality. When it comes to meditation, we all need something unique, and this course offers you endless creative options so you can uncover the style that works best for you. Head over to DevaTree.com, DevaTree.com to get started today. See you there.
So, my relationship with myself is how it's impacted. Number one, understanding myself better, like the choices that I made in the past and that I make now makes so much sense when I understand my constitution of being Pitta Kapha. So, back to the doshas, and just, yeah, forgiving myself, like being more forgiving and understanding, compassionate with myself. It's almost like if you first start diving into, I'll equate it with your zodiac sign, even like figuring out, oh, I'm a Libra. And not that it's not doctrine and like this have to, or this is you exactly, but there'll be things that you pick up on, like, oh, this is so me, right? So I feel like that about my Pitta and Kapha parts of me. Is like, this explains so much about things that might come up physically in my health, or the ways I handle situations. So it started with me feeling really like I was discovering myself more, which I loved. And yoga, like the same, yoga did that for me too. And then my kids, my friends, like understand, like, oh, when we're doing this and like rubbing, it's because, or partly because at least, of our different elements that we have in us and what's coming to the surface and how we handle things. So it just gives so much compassion to where other people are coming from in a work environment. It's helped me so much to be like, oh, not being like prescriptive or diagnostic about telling somebody what their dosha is at all, but just in my mind going, okay, this feels like a lot of Pitta energy coming at me, and I can be more forgiving of that because I understand they're not balanced right now. And all of us are. That was one of my biggest learnings. Is I, as a Libra, I was always saying I'm all about balance, always trying to be in balance. That was kind of my mantra. And I switched that when I learned more about Ayurveda to being, I don't think any of us are ever fully, like, it's not a destination to achieve being in balance. So now I say I'm balancing. It's like it's a moving, flowing, I'm balancing. It just feels so much more real and more freeing. And I hear very often from students of Down Dogs and Doshas, it's like my favorite testimonial to hear is that it helped them, the learnings helped them learn about themselves, but helped them in their relationships with their families. So people saying, like, I totally get my husband now. I'm not angry with him anymore when he does this, this, this. I totally get my kids. We have totally different elements at play that are happening in doshas. And so now I can be more patient with the way that they process things or the way that they express themselves. So that's my very favorite thing about Ayurveda is that understanding and that compassion that comes with kind of getting it on a different level.
I love that, Bija, so much. It kind of, you know what, it kind of reminded me of, yes, like you're saying, this relation or comparison almost to astrology, but also I'm finding it's reminding me of love languages and
Yeah.
like really coming to understand your love language and perhaps your partner's love language or your siblings' love language. And that kind of that piece, how can I support the other person
Mhm.
knowing that they're perhaps whatever dosha or whatever love language is their strongest. It's kind of this really, like you said, compassionate piece about really being there and supporting the other person or having some more grace around situation that you're coming to butt heads on. Or that's so cool. And so,
Yeah.
how can someone find out exactly what dosha or blend of doshas that they are? How can I, like, if I was going to leave here today, how could I find out which dosha
Okay,
I
so
am?
there are several ways. I would say to start with some really great quizzes, and we can leave that in at
Oh,
the end. We can add three that I really
yes.
recommend of places to go to do a dosha quiz or dosha test. I really recommend that you do more than one. So even if you're doing the most amazing that you this person that you follow and you really respect, they're going to have different questions on their questionnaire than another kind of slant. So I'll give you a couple that are very different from each other in the questions that they're asking or how they're pinpointing the doshas. So you get a better understanding. And you can do several if you feel like it. You could do four of them, five of them. I would caution against maybe doing like 12 or 15 of them because you'll start to get
Right.
confused. So just maybe three, do three different dosha tests. If you're still confused, because typically most of us, there are three doshas. So if you think about the elements and the doshas, the vata dosha contains or is made up of mostly or dominantly space and air. And then pitta, fire, predominantly with just a little bit of water. And earth is all about, or sorry, kapha is all about earth and water. So it seems so simplistic. Three doshas, five elements, but there are millions and trillions and endless combinations of how those can show up. Well, yeah, starting with the quizzes, it might be very clear for you. You might be very high in one dosha always in every quiz, and that'll be really clear and give you clarity. But often we are, I would say most often, we are a combination of two doshas. One is more prominent and one is a little bit less prominent, but you're still really made up of bidoshic, basically, is what you would call that. And then some of us are tridoshic, which means that we have like all three doshas, which is actually really helpful for balancing because you have everything happening, right? So, but bidoshic, having two doshas with one being a little bit higher is typical. So it can be very clear for people, and it can be like one test I'm like this, and the next test I'm like this. So yeah, you might have to play around with it for a little bit. And then you can also do an Ayurvedic doctor consultation where they will help you really decide even on physical traits and physical methods, like looking at your tongue, feeling your pulse will give them a lot of information about your dosha as well.
Cool. And
Yeah.
you've mentioned that you had a spa and that you brought this work into your spa setting. How did you go about doing that? How what kind of services were you providing in terms of were you doing kind of, I mean, maybe it's not like a doctoral consultation per se, but
No.
how did you bring the Ayurvedic elements into your spa work?
So I started, oh, you're taking me back now. It's been a while. I started just basically offering a couple of Ayurvedic body treatments from my training at Kripalu with just a little explanation to people beforehand. And then that blossomed years later into doing more of a like spending time with people before their facial or their body treatment, their aromatherapy massage, their hot stone massage, And we would actually do some yoga stretches first and just kind of get into our bodies so that they would be grounded when they got on the table. Because I noticed after years and years of performing facials and body treatments that people come in and they're at the end of their workday and they're frazzled and they couldn't find parking and there's something just happened on the phone and they're just like blah, or something happened at work. So to get them, it would take time to get them into that space where I felt like, okay, they just let go. Their muscles are ready now, and sometimes that was halfway through the treatment or towards the end. So I found with doing even a 5 minute, like literally it was 5 minutes of yoga, standing up, just stretching, bringing them into their breath, bringing them into their body is how we started. And then not to get too complicated with the doshas and what your prominent doshas are, but there's what we call vikriti and prikriti within Ayurveda. And your prikriti is your constitution you came into the world with. So it's your dosha balance and combination that you were born with. It's part of your cells, it's who you are. And then vikriti is what's out of balance right now. So, really, when we're talking about balancing a person that has something going on that they want help with, it's about right now, what's happening. So, we
Mhm.
can be one certain dosha, but we can still be out of balance in another dosha, depending on what's going on in life and the seasons, in your season of life, all of that. So, from a body work perspective or facial or any kind of wellness treatment, I want to know we don't have to figure out your dosha, basically. I just want to know what you're out of balance in right now. So, I wrote up a Vikriti questionnaire that helps kind of narrow it down and zone in on what are you feeling out of balance in right now. And then I can make an aromatherapy blend that would help with that, like really customized to what's happening with you in this moment. So that's how I handled that.
The more that we understand these kinds of things, the more that we can like harness the energy to be able to help better
Yeah.
ourselves and help with like ease ourselves in what's going on in life. And because there's always so much happening, huh? And
Yeah.
yeah, and I'm just feeling that very much that um, fast-paced energy right now. What
Yeah.
should people be focusing on right now, in general terms, to kind of bring some balance into their lives?
Yeah, so definitely without even having to think about what dosha you are, again, coming back to the fact that it's pitta dosha right now in the world, in our world. So think cooling, like how can you cool your thoughts? What does that look like for you? Does that look like setting aside some more meditation time in the morning or the middle of the day? Or it's the self-awareness for you. When do you feel like you're getting more hot-headed or you're reacting in a hot kind of way? How can you cool yourself? Does that mean having more cooling foods at lunchtime that's just going to help not spark more heat, like being mindful of, like, as you're shaking your chili flakes on your lunch, maybe not in the middle of July. I'm going to do that and be increasing more and more heat, especially if you're finding like pitta might manifest, high pitta might manifest as rashes. Like if you're feeling your skin is rashy, redder, not happy, not comfortable. Your mind, if you're just feeling like that, like spark of fieriness, that you need that
Mhm.
cooling down, or maybe you just feel like your body temperature like just like so overheated. So thinking about what you can do, maybe a cool compress around your neck while you're working on your computer. Maybe if you're going for a walk, like in today's heat and yesterday's, where it's getting up to like 40 degrees with the humidity, going for a slower pace walk, not making it about go, 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 go. And when you come back, give yourself time to cool. So, whether that means a cool glass of water with some lime and mint, or just time to cool your thoughts for 2 or 3 minutes before you go on to your next task or whatever you're doing. Just really being mindful of that. If you're going to a soccer game with your kids, bringing a cold compress for around your neck or your wrists. We cool down very quickly through our pulse points on our wrists and like behind our ears and our neck. So that's always a great place for cooling. If you don't want to be thinking about menu and changing foods, you can literally just cool down, go for a swim, get in a lake, get in a pool.
Just it seems like just such an amazing tool to be in this reflective state. I think that commonly, well, and I know that this is for me, that it's in the doing that I really forget about utilizing this knowledge and this
Yeah,
understanding, right? So it's
yeah.
not until we've reached that kind of almost breaking point or that irritability or what have you that you're like, hey, wait, like I'm at this state and I forgot that I could be doing all of these things. So I think for me personally, it's just that reminder always to be kind of in that reflection, thinking, okay, this is where I'm going, this is where I'm headed, this is a potential of what could arise, and how can I balance that out? And what can I be doing to
Yeah.
make sure that I don't reach those heightened states of, yeah, irritability and,
So true. I love that word
right?
irritability. That's a perfect word for when you know that you're getting out of balance in pitta, is if you're feeling irritable without really just cause kind of
Yeah,
thing. Yeah. And it's so
yeah.
true. We're human. So being kind to ourselves too, that we may get to that point where we are already really out of balance before we start to bring ourselves back to balance. So thinking about it seasonally helps me with that so much too. We're coming into the season, I'm going to prevent those things from happening, right? Always easier to prevent something than to deal with it when it's already happening. And then that will just give you this kind of blanket manageable bites to prevent it getting too out of whack. And then the notice things, maybe journaling, if that's something you like to do, talking to one of your soul sisters about it, doing things together as far as menu planning, or just having that outlet. Again, back to that protect your peace. That's a really important thing to do in these hot summer months. Give yourself some space for you and for what makes you be joyful. Like bringing in joy is another way to balance pitta too.
Oh, amazing. You kind of hit on a little bit of this piece of inner work and understanding ourselves, and
Mm.
then helping ourselves to gain a little bit of forgiveness. Tell me about a little bit more of that work for yourself and how Ayurveda has helped you to really hone in on that piece of compassion and forgiveness for yourself.
Yeah. So I'm trying to think back of when I first like kind of figured out that I'm more pitta kapha. I think the pitta part, like the feeling like you need to be achieving something, would be a very pitta trait. Being like very motivated, very driven, which in our society we think of as a positive, but really that can create burnout, burning the candle at both ends. Like all of these, it's so interesting when you think of those analogies, they all have
Mm,
heat associated with them, right? So burning out, hot headedness, fieriness, that's all pitta surfacing and showing itself. So that was a really big realization for me, that it took me a long time to get to a place where I let myself not have to get everything perfect. That was a
mm,
big thing for me. Like I'm not, even to the point of I'm not going to do something if I don't think I can do it perfectly. That's a huge part of me. And I think, like, honestly, I think part of that is a flip side of not enoughness, which is
mm,
what I really ended up working on, was that feeling of not being enough and then kind of having to prove myself, which is such a pitta thing, to be that proving, that like constant, have to always be doing something, getting somewhere, achieving something. So many years ago was when I had that light bulb moment of, I need to, that protecting my peace again. Like I need to not say yes to everything. I need to say yes to things even when I know I'm not going to be perfect at it. That was huge. And DevaTree and Tamika helped me, and Carolyn helped me so much with that too. Just trusting, even with down dogs and doshas. I was like a
mhm,
baby into Ayurveda when I first started really creating the course and thinking about how I wanted that to manifest. And having people that trust in you like that just know and have this philosophy that it doesn't have to be perfect, right? Like, would you
mhm,
do your podcast that you're passionate about if you thought, I have to, every single second has to be perfect? We're not going to, it stops you from doing things that bring you joy. right? So that's a big life lesson that came from a lot of other places, not just Ayurveda, but understanding myself and why I was like that really helped me just even that out and know that no is a full sentence and I can really say yes to what makes me jazzed and sparks joy and say no to things that might even spark joy too, but I can't do everything. So that helped me a lot as a parent too, and helped
Mm.
me role model that for my kids and understanding my kids' doshas and knowing they need different things. Like they're different people, they need different ways of coping, different information, like allowances for them being themselves. So all of that has really been my biggest gift.
Again, this piece of by understanding and allowing this all to unfold for you has really impacted your relationships in your life with your kids. And you mentioned work before. And so you said that you had this is bringing you back when I was asking about your spa days. And where are you at now? What are you doing now?
Okay, interesting. Yeah, so the letting go of the spa was more about just timing. I had done it for 11 years, wanted something new. I do love change. I do embrace change. And we were physically moving geographic locations. And I knew I was ready to let go of the spa. And I didn't want to have another spa, but I wanted to stay in the skincare industry. So for many, many years now, like the spa has been 14 years since I left the spa. Though I did still do some my yoga Ayurvedic treatments after that for a couple of years when we lived here too. And now I'm and have been for years a sales rep and educator for a skincare line, for two skincare lines actually. So I go into spas. So I'm still in that world that I love, but in a different capacity. And it's so cool that you asked me that because I'm actually in the midst of creating a spa Ayurvedic facial program where estheticians will and spa therapists will learn basics of Ayurveda, understanding Ayurveda, like a lot of what we talked about today, the doshas, the elements, how to balance yourself, and then bringing that to their clients so that they can customize a treatment based on what's going on with them in that moment. So if we just do the same facial all summer on everybody, we're really not customizing how we can help them because they're going to have different things going on in their skin and their psychology, like everything, how they're feeling right now. So bringing that all to fruition of bringing in the Ayurveda and the facials and the spa. And I have not done that before. I didn't do that in my spas in the past in the same way that I'm planning for this course.
Well, that sounds amazing, Bija. I'm recalling this was like a couple of years ago now, the online facial basically that I had received as a gift tree from you. Remember this?
Yes, I
And
do.
just how lovely. Like I can attest, you are an amazing light in this world, Bija, for listening and being attentive to what somebody needs. And so I just am so honored that you joined me today on this podcast. And I want to thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Candace. Those were fabulous questions. Like, I don't think I've ever put together what you asked me about myself and Ayurveda. Like, I've thought of all of those aspects, but to really like hone in on that came up for me first of the not enoughness and the overachieving. So that was like, that's healing for me too. So your questions were incredible. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All the love. Mwah.
All the love. Peace.
Yay, you made it to the end of the Love Who You Are podcast. If you liked this episode, please subscribe and leave a review or text a friend and share the love. These small actions make a big difference in this realm, and we thank you. And we have a present for you, a guide to creating and sustaining a home practice. In this free video, 7 experienced wellness leaders share what it takes to overcome the struggle of creating a home practice in anything: yoga, meditation, journaling, or whatever you'd love to do more of. You don't want to miss the wisdom of these incredible women. You'll find your free gift at devatree.com. That's DevaTree.com. We'll see you next time and know that you are loved.